Talking about erectile dysfunction isn't easy. Most brush it off or blame themselves, saying things like, I lost my mojo. Or people make excuses like, I had a long day at work, or sorry, honey, I'm just not feeling it. Guys, with Roman, it's easy to talk about with a real healthcare professional who can prescribe real medication. It's simple, safe, and totally discreet. With Roman, you get a free online evaluation and ongoing care for ED, all from the comfort and privacy of your home. A healthcare professional will work with you to find the best treatment plan. If medication is appropriate, Roman will ship it to you for free with 2-day shipping. The whole process is straightforward, simple, and discreet. Getting started is simple. Just go to getroman.com/Chael and complete an online visit. Go to getroman.com/Chael today. If approved, you'll get $15 off your first order of ED treatment. Jake Paul says that he's going to drag Tyron Woodley into deep waters. He said, let's see how well he can swim. Now, when you hear the term deep waters, I don't know where this came along. We're going to take a guy late into the fight, get him tired, and make him quit. Somebody somewhere along the way came up with the term deep waters. Okay. That's an interesting claim. I mean, it takes years. It takes years and years to build up that kind of stamina, to be able to physically break another man. Not to beat him, not to beat him up, not to hurt him, to physically break him, to get him so exhausted that he quits. It's called weaponizing pace. A few athletes have been able to do it. It dates back to a guy named Dan Gable in 1972 that showed the whole world if you can get your opponent tired, you can make a coward out of him. It doesn't now matter who's better. If he's exhausted and you're not, you can win. Randy Couture did it. George St. Pierre did it. Khabib put a pace on people. But I offer you those names because I have to spread them out that far. It's a very uncommon thing to do. Both guys can generally hold up. And for Paul to come out and make this claim, as youthful as he is, I mean, it takes years, truly years, of building up your lactic acid. It's like you'll hear about training camps. Guys that only train in training camps suck. None of them are any good. None of them go anywhere. You can't get anything done in 8 to 10 weeks. You can sharpen it. You can go through a peaking process. You can enhance and focus on it. You can't get anything done in 8 to 10 weeks, no matter what you sacrifice. So I only bring that to you because it's a big claim by Paul, but it's also an interesting way to make things happen. Look, hold this thought, tie it in with Conor, okay? Conor Poirier Part 2, what was different? And don't tell me about the punches and the kicks or the little calf kicks. What was different was the approach to the fight, where Conor was still out on this PR tour and trying to look like the nice guy in front of the world. Now, when you talk trash, it does a couple of things. The public will believe that you're trying to get into your opponent's head. And some guys are so mentally weak, the public might be right. There might be fighters that are so weak out there, regardless of their level of success, that you can frustrate them. What good does that do, you might ask? I'll tell you. If you can frustrate a guy, it's very similar to who's got more pressure on them. You hear these questions, but then the sports announcer never tells you why it matters. Why it matters if you're in somebody's head, quote unquote, or who has the pressure. It creates a fatigue. It makes you tired faster. There's an actual chemical release in your brain, and it will get your body tired if you're the one that cares more, or if you're the one that has more pressure, or if the opponent is in your head, just so you understand this. What's really happening when a fighter's talking trash is he's building himself up. That's the part that isn't seen. You think he's out there trying to sell tickets or talk his way into opportunities or get into your opponent's head. You're not wrong. That's a piece of it. But what's really happening when you're out there saying, I am the greatest, I am the best, no one can beat me, I'm the greatest of all time, and it goes in that order. You'll slowly pick it up. You'll start with, I deserve main events, I can fight for a world championship, I can even beat this guy. And you'll keep going. And the reason it goes in that order is because you, as the author of the statement, don't believe it. You're uncomfortable saying it. You don't even feel right. I remember where I was. I remember where I was and what I was driving the first time I told a guy who was a reporter, I'm the greatest to have ever done it. And I remember after it left my mouth, I paused, waiting for him to either laugh or dispute it. And I remember when he didn't, I remember thinking, why didn't he dispute that? I'm not the greatest of all time. And so I kept saying it. And slowly I believed it. It became a real thing. I started training differently. It wasn't just a mental approach. I started training differently. I was given this advice as a kid because there was a guy named Dave Schultz, who's a very famous wrestler. And Dave wrote a note to himself and he stuck it on his mirror that he brushed his teeth in every morning so that he had to see it every day. And it didn't say, I'm going to be the Olympic champion. He said, I am the Olympic champion. And he saw it every single day. And he did this as a boy. He was 14 or 15 years old. But he began to believe it. And he also began to prepare like an Olympic champion. And as weird as it felt the day that he wrote it, and as much as he didn't believe it, day after day of seeing it, not only did he believe it, he expected it. And he went on and he became the Olympic champion. And I was given this advice when I was a kid. Doug Samron, one of my coaches who knew and was friends with the Schultz brothers, told me that this is what they did. And he told me to do it. I never did it. I never one day wrote that down. I never one day tore that sheet out. I never one day taped that on the mirror. And it wasn't because I didn't have paper or a pen or Scotch tape. It's because I didn't believe it. I would have felt silly doing that. What if somebody came in and saw that I did that? I only bring that to you because later in my life, when I started to do it, I did believe it. And I believe that Conor McGregor went through the same thing. I believe when everybody thought he was out there being an entertainer, or he's trying to get in Jose Aldo's head, I don't think that that's what was motivating him. I believe Conor was like me, where he started making these claims, but then he started to notice how saying those things out loud affected him inside, and also how it affected his training. And it affected his discipline. It affected his work ethic. I believe Conor wasn't trying to talk Jose Aldo or Floyd Mayweather out of something. He was trying to talk himself into something. And I believe he succeeded. Conor McGregor he's a guy from Ireland with a damn good left hand. So what? He's got no business stopping Chad Mendes' takedowns or getting up and scrambling off the bottom when Chad Mendes is on top of him, but he did it. He got no business being in there in a sport with Floyd Mayweather that he's never done before, and Floyd's never lost it, but he did it. And he did it very well. And that's one of the sides to the positive talk, that when Conor started the PR tour and he quit doing those things, he quit being brash, it wasn't just a letdown from us fans that enjoy that commodity that Conor brings to the table, that enjoy the entertainment. He also stopped putting that pressure on himself. And I'm not sure from a psychological standpoint that Conor understands that was the difference in the second Poirier fight. It was the approach. He got into the ring as though he was above Poirier, and I'm sure he felt that way. He'd already dusted Poirier. It wasn't a close contest. At no part in that first fight was Conor ever in trouble, and it was a pretty short night. But it was also a meaningful difference whether Conor's aware of it or not. Saying some of those things isn't just good for ticket sales. Saying those things isn't good just to get your opponent to second guess it. Saying those things is what gets you ready to go out and act on it. And I'll be very curious what Conor's approach is. I haven't seen or heard a lot of Conor leading into this Poirier fight, and it's only a couple of weeks away. I haven't seen a lot of stuff. Maybe that's part of Conor's plan. Lay low, put my head down, get the job done. Maybe. But I don't know that I'll like that any more than I liked nice Conor. There's a certain edge that certain fighters have. There's a certain anger and a certain hostility that they bring to the ring. It's the very reason that they coined the phrase, a rich man can't fight. Because he generally isn't angry. He's generally having a pretty good day. He generally doesn't have that edge. And I think that it's very relevant whether Conor finds it or not. Look, the Conor Poirier fight is not what you guys saw. And the fans wanted to understand this. But every fighter did. That fight was over 3 minutes in. At 3 minutes into that fight, Conor was looking for the door. He just couldn't find it. He was looking to get out of that fight. And the reason every fighter could recognize it is because we've all done it and we're all ashamed of it. But there is a look that a fighter has. I will tell you, there was a day when Conor McGregor, whether it was true or not, never would admit that a calf kick hurt, right? I will never say those words to you. You kicked me in a soft muscle in the back of my leg. and therefore I lost an ass whipping contest, whether it was true or not, you'd never get me to cop to it. And there was a time you'd have never got Conor to cop to it. And the narrative and story of that fight of how great these calf kicks are, look, man, it's a weapon amongst many. It's not like some great weapon. Conor found himself in a fight that was harder than Conor thought it was going to be, against a guy whose ass Conor had already whipped. Those are the things that started to play the mental game. That's where Conor thought, land this big punch. Let's make it all look good, and let's go home. I got to get out of here. He went into panic mode. It's one of these things where if you admit that ahead of time, that panic mode and that fear, that adversity that you deal with loses its power. I will be very curious as to what the approach from a media standpoint Conor takes going in to Poirier Part 3.